A quiet evening stretched across the sky, soft clouds drifting like cotton thoughts over the distant hills. The air held a gentle hush, the kind that whispers to the heart that it may rest. In a small, tidy apartment on the edge of a bustling city, a single letter lay on a wooden desk, its paper warm from the light that filtered through a half-closed curtain. Wren Ashcombe stared at the ink, the looping script of a name she had known only in the quiet corners of family stories: Grandmother Hazel. The words were simple, a notice of inheritance, a request to tend a shop that had stood for generations in a village cradled by forest and sea. She lifted the paper soft beneath her fingertips, and breathed in the scent of aged parchment, of ink and of distant rain. A feeling of both curiosity and quiet unease settled over her, a gentle tide rising and falling within her chest. She imagined the shop, hidden among ancient oaks, the scent of herbs and earth mingling with the faint hum of lingering magic. She imagined a cat, sleek and amber-eyed, watching silently from a windowsill. The night grew deeper, the city lights dimmed, and the world outside seemed to hold its breath. With a calm resolve, Wren gathered a small bundle of belongings, a satchel of books, a handful of herbs, a wooden spoon she had used for countless recipes. She placed a simple, worn cloak over her shoulders, the fabric brushing her skin like a soft sigh. The road ahead stretched beyond the familiar streets, winding through hills that rose like sleeping giants, each ridge a gentle lullaby for the weary traveler. She boarded a slow, rattling carriage that creaked gently as it rolled over cobblestones, the wheels turning in a rhythm that matched the steady beat of her heart. The driver, a kindly old woman with eyes that seemed to have seen many seasons, offered a smile that was both welcoming and a quiet invitation to let go of worry. The carriage moved forward, the wheels turning, the landscape unfolding in a slow, measured dance. Fields of golden wheat rolled past, bending in a soft breeze that carried the scent of lavender and distant pine. The sky above was a deepening blue, dotted with the first shy stars that began to appear, each a tiny lantern flickering in the evening calm. As the carriage entered a narrow pass, the dense forest of Thistledown rose on either side, its trees standing tall and ancient, branches intertwined like the gentle fingers of an old friend. The forest seemed to breathe, the leaves rustling in a quiet song, a melody that invited the mind to settle, to linger on the present moment. The carriage creaked to a stop at the edge of the village, the road giving way to a small, moss-soft path that led to a cluster of stone cottages. Thistledown lay before her, a place where time moved slower, where the rhythm of daily life was set by the tide and the seasons, not by the hurried tick of a city clock. Lanterns glowed softly from windows, casting warm pools of light that seemed to invite a gentle pause. A gentle murmur of voices floated through the air, a low hum of conversation that was both familiar and distant. Wren stepped down from the carriage, the wooden steps creaking under her weight, each sound a delicate echo in the quiet evening. She felt the coolness of the stone beneath her feet, the softness of the moss that brushed against her ankles, and a sense of peace settled over her like a blanket of clouds. The village square, though modest, held a certain charm, a fountain of clear water, its sound a soft, steady murmur, a bench beneath an ancient oak, its branches spreading like protective arms. She walked toward the bitter root shop, following a narrow lane lined with small gardens where herbs grew in tidy rows, their leaves whispering in the wind. The shop itself stood modestly, its wooden sign swinging gently, a carved root intertwined with a silver leaf. The door, slightly ajar, welcomed her with a faint creak that sounded like a sigh of recognition. Light filtered through the dusty windows, casting soft golden shafts across the floorboards, each beam dancing lazily on the worn wooden shelves. Inside, the shop held a quiet stillness, as if waiting for a new story to begin. Dust lay upon the counters, catching the light in tiny sparkles that seemed to float like tiny fireflies. Shelves were lined with glass jars filled with dried herbs, dried flowers, and curious ingredients that glimmered faintly, each a memory of a potion crafted long ago. An old wooden counter, scarred by years of careful work, stood at the center, bearing the faint imprint of countless hands that had measured, mixed, and mended. A soft, low meow sounded from a corner, a gentle vibration that broke the silence. A sleek, amber-eyed cat lounged on a windowsill, its tail flicking lazily, eyes half closed as if in a half-dream. Pepper, the shop's resident, lifted his head, his gaze settling on Wren with a quiet, measured curiosity. He rose with a graceful stretch, his paws making a soft padding across the worn floor, the sound barely more than a whisper. Wren approached, her steps slow, each footfall a gentle rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the shop itself. She knelt beside the cat, extending a hand that hovered a breath away from his fur. The cat watched her, his whiskers trembling slightly, his ears tilting as if listening to a distant song. The whispering forest of dreams in a gentle valley where the mist rises like a soft sigh. There lies a forest that cradles the world in quiet. The trees stand tall and patient, their branches swaying ever so slowly, as if breathing in the night and exhaling calm. Each leaf catches the pale light of the moon, turning it into a whisper of silver, and the air is filled with a sweet, slow perfume of pine and earth. You begin to walk along a narrow path, your feet touching the mossy ground with the softest of steps. The path is smooth and warm beneath you, and with each step you feel a gentle rhythm, a heartbeat that matches the pulse of the forest. The sound of your breathing is slow and even, a calm tide that rises and falls in perfect harmony with the rustling of the leaves. The trees lean close, their trunks smooth and ancient, their bark cool to the touch. You place a hand upon a trunk, feeling the quiet strength within, and the tree seems to hum a low, soothing lullaby. The hum travels through the roots, through the soil, and reaches the very core of your being, spreading a gentle warmth that settles deep inside. Above, the stars twinkle like distant lanterns, each one a soft glow that watches over the forest. Their light drifts down, painting the ground with gentle specks of brightness. You notice a small brook nearby, its water flowing lazily over smooth stones, each ripple a soft murmur that blends with the wind. The water sings a quiet song of continuity, and you listen, allowing its melody to wash over you, smoothing away any lingering thoughts. A gentle breeze brushes your cheeks, carrying with it the faint scent of lavender and wildflower. It moves through the trees, rustling the leaves in a slow, steady rhythm, as if the forest itself is breathing. You inhale the scent, feeling it fill your lungs with calm, and exhale slowly, releasing any tension, any worry, any hurry. Further along the path, a clearing opens, bathed in moonlight. In the center stands a small stone bench, worn smooth by time. You sit upon it, feeling the cool stone against your skin, and the world seems to pause, to hold its breath. The night sky stretches above, a velvet canvas dotted with constellations that tell stories of ancient peace. You watch the stars, one by one, each one a quiet promise of stillness. The forest around you is alive, yet it moves with the patience of a slow river. Owls hoot softly in the distance, their calls low and measured, echoing the steady beat of your heart. Crickets chirp in a gentle chorus, each note a tiny ripple in the night, adding to the soothing symphony that surrounds you. The sounds are soft, they are steady, they are comforting. You feel the weight of the day melt away, replaced by a gentle lightness that rises from the earth. The cool night air wraps around you like a soft blanket, and you are cradled by the forest's quiet embrace. Each breath you take is a wave of calm, each exhale a release of any lingering thoughts. You are safe here, in this place where time moves slowly, where every moment is a gentle pause. A deer steps into the clearing, its eyes bright and calm. It watches you with a quiet curiosity, then turns and moves gracefully through the trees, its steps silent on the soft ground. The deer's presence is a reminder of the gentle flow of life, of the simple beauty that exists in each quiet moment. The moon rises higher, casting a silvery glow that deepens the tranquility. The forest seems to hum a little softer now, as if settling into a deeper, more soothing rhythm. You feel your eyelids grow heavy, the softness of the night inviting you to rest. The world around you continues its slow, steady dance, each element moving in perfect harmony. You allow yourself to sink deeper into the calm, feeling the gentle pull of sleep drawing near. The rustle of leaves, the murmur of the brook, the distant owl's call, all become a soft lullaby that carries you farther into relaxation. Your thoughts, the night deepened around the little village of Thistledown, and the soft glow of lanterns flickered like fireflies caught in glass. Wren walked along the winding cobblestones, each step a gentle sigh against the stone, each breath a quiet rhythm that matched the whisper of the trees. The path led her past the inn, where Mabel's warm voice had once floated out into the square, now a low murmur that seemed to carry a hint of kindness beneath its wary tone. The air smelled of damp earth and distant sea, a scent that settled into the marrow and made the world feel both vast and intimate at once. She turned a corner where the lane narrowed, and there, tucked between a row of ancient oaks and a garden of wild thyme, stood the Bitter Root shop. Its wooden sign hung slightly askew, the letters faded but still legible, the bitter root motif etched into the wood like a memory waiting to be recalled. The door was ajar, a thin sliver of darkness inviting her inside, and the faint glow of a single candle swayed behind the glass, casting a trembling light upon the cracked tiles. Wren pushed the door gently, the old hinges sighing in protest, and stepped into the quiet sanctuary that had been her grandmother's. The shop was a tapestry of shadow and soft light, the walls lined with shelves that held jars of dried herbs, bundles of twine, and bottles of amber liquid that caught the candle's flame and turned it into tiny suns. The scent of rosemary, lavender, and something sweeter, perhaps honeyed chamomile, wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. She paused by the counter, her fingertips brushing the smooth wood, feeling the faint pulse of lingering magic that lingered like a heartbeat in the room. The ledger that had belonged to Hazel lay open, its pages filled with neat, looping script, notes on roots and petals, recipes and reminders. Wren's eyes traced the lines, each word a soft echo of a voice she had never heard but now felt close to, as if the ink itself breathed with a gentle, patient rhythm. A soft rustle disturbed the stillness, and from a shadowed corner emerged Pepper, the cat whose amber eyes glowed with quiet scrutiny. The cat's fur was a patchwork of soot and silver, his tail flicking lazily as he surveyed the newcomer. He approached with a measured tread, pausing at the edge of the counter, his whiskers twitching in the candlelight. Wren knelt slowly, extending a hand that trembled not from fear, but from the tenderness of a moment long awaited. Pepper leaned into the touch, his purr a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards, a sound that settled into the core of the shop and into Wren's own chest. She rose, feeling the gentle thrum of the cat's approval, and moved toward the back of the shop, where a small window opened onto a garden that had been left untended for years. Vines curled around the stone, wildflowers peeked through the cracks, and the earth beneath was dark and rich, waiting for a hand to coax life from it. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, painting silver patterns on the soil, and Wren could hear the distant murmur of the sea beyond the cliffs, a lullaby that rose and fell with the tide. She placed a hand on the cool stone, feeling the subtle pulse of the land, and whispered a quiet promise to the roots that lay hidden beneath. The promise was simple, a vow to tend, to listen, to heal. As she spoke, a gentle breeze slipped through the open window, carrying with it the scent of pine and sea salt, and the candle flame danced brighter for a heartbeat before settling back into its steady glow. In the quiet of the shop, a soft knock sounded at the door. Wren turned, her heart fluttering like a moth's wings. The door opened to reveal Corvin, the village herbalist, his coat dusted with the remnants of a day spent among the fields. His eyes, a deep green like moss, held a mixture of curiosity and cautious respect. He stepped inside, the wooden floor creaking softly under his weight, and his gaze fell upon the ledger, the jars, the candle, and finally, the cat curled contentedly on the counter. "Evening, Wren," he said, his voice low and steady, as if spoken to the stones themselves. "I heard you had arrived. The village has been quiet." He glanced toward the garden, his fingers brushing the edge of his coat, as if feeling the pull of the earth beyond the walls. Wren smiled, a soft curve that seemed to lift the shadows just a little. "It feels like the shop has been waiting," she replied, her words flowing like a gentle stream. "I think it's time to bring it back to life." Corvin nodded, his expression softening. "The herbs in the garden have grown wild. If you'd like, I can help tend them. There's a patch of bitter root that's been stubborn, but it holds great healing." He reached into his coat and produced a small bundle of dried leaves, their edges crisp and dark, the scent earthy and grounding. Wren took the bundle, feeling the weight of the leaves in her palm, and felt a quiet thrill stir within her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "Together we can coax the garden back." They moved toward the garden, stepping onto the soft moss that cushioned their feet. The moon cast a silvery veil over the foliage, each leaf shimmering like a secret waiting to be shared. Wren knelt beside the stubborn root, her fingers digging gently into the soil, feeling the cool dampness and the faint hum of life beneath. She could hear the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, the soft chirp of crickets, the occasional sigh of the wind through the trees, all weaving a tapestry of calm that wrapped around her thoughts. Corvin knelt beside her, the bitter root shop, the moon lingered low, a soft lantern in the night sky, spilling gentle silver over the garden's tangled beds. Wren's fingers moved slowly through the damp earth, each touch a quiet promise, each breath a measured sigh. The soil was cool, dark, and alive with the faint pulse of hidden roots, the subtle rhythm of life beneath the surface. She felt the earth's steadiness, the way it held her weight without complaint, the way it welcomed her presence as a gentle friend. Corvin knelt beside her, his shoulders relaxed, his eyes reflecting the pale glow. He traced the outline of a leaf with a fingertip, as if reading a secret written in veins. "The bitter root," he whispered, "has a stubborn heart. It resists the first touch, but once coaxed, it yields a sweetness that can mend what has been broken." His voice was low, each word a soft ripple across the stillness. Wren listened, the sound of his words settling like dew on a spider's web. She placed her palm over the bundle of dried leaves he had offered, feeling the faint crackle of dried veins, the lingering scent of forest rain. The leaves seemed to hum, a low, comforting vibration that matched the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She inhaled slowly, letting the earthy aroma fill her lungs, letting it settle in the quiet chambers of her mind. Around them the garden breathed. Crickets sang a slow, steady chorus, their chirps a lullaby that swayed with the wind. A small moth fluttered near a blossom, its wings catching the moonlight in a fleeting shimmer. The air was thick with the perfume of night-blooming jasmine, each scent a gentle caress that brushed against her senses. "Let's start with the soil," Corvin suggested, his tone patient. He reached for a small wooden trowel, its wood smooth from years of use. He handed it to Wren, and she took it, feeling the weight of the wood, the grain warm from his hands. Together they turned the earth in small circles, each motion deliberate, each turn a soft sigh of soil giving way. The earth loosened under their care, releasing tiny specks of moss that clung like tiny emeralds to the surface. Wren's hands moved with a rhythm that matched the whisper of the wind through the trees, a gentle dance of give and take. She felt the coolness of the night seep into her skin, The way the dampness clung to her fingertips, the way the garden seemed to respond, to lean in, to accept her touch. A soft rustle sounded from the edge of the garden, and Pepper, the amber-eyed cat, emerged from the shadows. He moved with the grace of a creature accustomed to silence, his tail flicking lazily, his paws barely making a sound on the moss. He paused at Wren's side, his gaze steady, his whiskers twitching in curiosity. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, the night waiting for his next move. Wren lowered her hand, offering a gentle stroke. Pepper leaned into the touch, his fur warm against her skin, his purr a low, steady vibration that resonated through the garden like a hidden drum. The sound was soft, soothing, a reminder that even the smallest beings could carry great comfort. Pepper's eyes closed, his breathing even, his presence a calm anchor amidst the night's quiet flow. Corvin smiled, the lines around his eyes softening. "She's beginning to trust you," he said, his voice a quiet affirmation. "She always knew the shop needed a heart that beats with patience." He turned his gaze to the patch of bitter root, now slightly loosened. Its dark, the bitter root shop. The night deepened around the garden, a gentle blanket of quiet that settled over the rows of herbs and the soft earth beneath Wren's feet. The moon rose slowly, a pale lantern that painted silver ribbons across the leaves, and the air held the scent of damp moss and sweet earth, a perfume that whispered of growth and patience. Wren breathed in the night, each inhale a slow tide that filled her lungs, each exhale a soft sigh that released the day's lingering worries. She turned her attention back to the patch of bitter root, its dark vines now loosened just enough to feel the pulse of life beneath them. Her fingers brushed the soil, feeling the cool, yielding texture, feeling the tiny roots whisper against her palm. The garden responded in kind, a gentle rustle of leaves, a faint sigh of wind that seemed to say, "You are welcome here." The cat, Pepper, settled beside her, his amber eyes reflecting the moonlight. He lay down, his body a warm, steady weight against the cool grass, his breathing slow and even. The rhythm of his purr synced with the distant croak of a night cricket, a low hum that rose and fell like a lullaby. Wren's hand moved in a slow, circular motion, tracing the outline of the garden's edge, a motion that echoed the slow turning of the world itself. In the distance, the faint glow of the shop's windows flickered, a soft amber that beckoned like a quiet promise. The bitter root shop stood quiet, its wooden sign swaying gently in the night breeze, the letters etched with a history that stretched beyond any one lifetime. Inside, the shelves held jars of dried petals, bottles of amber liquid, and bundles of dried herbs, each a memory waiting to be awakened. Corvin stepped forward from the shadows of the hedgerow, his presence as calm as the night itself. He carried a small wooden box, its lid worn smooth by years of opening and closing. He set it down on the stone bench beside the garden and opened it with reverent hands. Inside lay a handful of dried bitter root, each piece a dark, glossy fragment that seemed to hold a secret of the earth. He looked at Wren with eyes that held both understanding and encouragement. "Your grandmother kept these for a reason," he said, his voice a soft rustle, like leaves turning over each other. "She believed in the balance of what is bitter and what is sweet. The root can heal if you honor its patience." Wren lifted a piece of the root, feeling its weight, feeling the coolness of the night settle upon it. She placed it gently on the stone table, and the garden seemed to lean in, as if listening to the quiet conversation between her and the earth. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, allowing the scent of the root to mingle with the night air, a scent that was earthy, deep, and comforting. She began to chant, a low murmur that rose from her throat like a soft wind through pine needles. The words were simple, a melody of gratitude and intention, spoken slowly, each syllable a stone placed carefully on a path. "Root of earth, deep and true, share your strength, renew what's due." Her voice blended with the night, with Pepper's purr, with the distant waves that lapped against the far shore of the village. The chant lingered, each phrase stretching like a thread of silver light, each breath a gentle wave that soothed the soil beneath. The bitter root responded, a faint glow pulsing from its surface, a soft amber light that spread like a quiet fire, warming the stone, the grass, the air. The garden seemed to exhale, a sigh of relief that rippled through the leaves. Pepper lifted his head, his ears twitching, his eyes half closed, as if he sensed the shift in the night's heartbeat. Corvin watched, his expression softening, a quiet pride blooming in his chest. As the glow faded, the garden settled back into its calm, the night returning to its gentle rhythm. Wren opened her eyes, feeling the cool night on her skin, feeling the steady beat of her heart matching the pulse of the earth. She smiled, a quiet smile that spread warmth through her chest. The garden had accepted her touch, had whispered its approval, and in that moment, the weight of the village's old fears seemed to lift, feather-light, like a leaf drifting on a still pond. The shop's door creaked open softly, a sound that blended with the night's hush. Inside, the shelves waited. The jars glimmered faintly in the amber light, and a single candle flickered on the counter, its flames steady and calm. Wren stepped inside, the wooden floor cool beneath her feet, the scent of herbs wrapping around her like a familiar blanket. She moved slowly, each step measured, each breath a gentle wren stepped across the threshold, and felt the cool wood beneath her feet. Each plank a whisper of the many footsteps that had passed before her. The scent of dried lavender, rosemary, and a faint hint of pine wrapped around her like an old, comforting shawl, and she breathed it in slowly, letting the fragrance settle into her lungs. The candle on the counter flickered gently, its amber glow dancing on the glass bottles that lined the shelves, casting soft reflections that seemed to pulse in time with the quiet heartbeat of the shop. She moved forward with deliberate slowness, her fingertips brushing lightly over the smooth surfaces of the jars, feeling the faint hum of residual magic that lingered like a warm breath in the air. A jar of powdered moonflower caught the light and sent a tiny cascade of silver sparkles across the wood, and Wren smiled at the delicate beauty of such small things. She paused for a moment, allowing the quiet to settle around her, feeling the steady rhythm of the candle flame as it steadied her thoughts. On a high shelf, a leather-bound ledger lay open, its pages filled with Hazel's careful script. The ink was dark and precise, each line a thread that wove together the history of the bitter root shop. Wren ran her thumb over the edges of the pages, feeling the faint rise and fall of the paper, and a sense of connection rose within her, as if the words were a bridge spanning the years between them. She read a line about a winter when the village's wells had frozen, and how a simple broth of thyme and ginger had warmed the hands of the children. The memory of that kindness settled in her mind like a soft stone, solid and reassuring. A soft rustle sounded from the back of the shop, and Pepper emerged from the shadows, his sleek fur catching the candlelight. The cat's amber eyes regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and measured caution. He stretched, his muscles rippling under his coat, and then padded silently toward the counter, his tail flicking lazily. Wren knelt down, extending a hand with gentle patience, and the cat brushed his cheek against her palm. The contact was brief, but it carried the promise of trust, a small offering of acceptance that settled like a feather on her heart. She rose again and walked to the window, where the night outside lay draped in a velvet hush. The forest beyond the village stretched dark and deep, its trees standing like ancient guardians, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. A thin veil of mist rose from the ground, curling around the roots of the old oaks, and the moon cast a silvery path across the meadow. The world beyond the glass seemed to breathe in unison with the shop, a slow, steady rhythm that soothed the edges of her mind. Inside, the shelves held more than jars and bottles, they held stories. A small wooden box sat near the back, its lid slightly ajar, revealing a bundle of dried bitter root, its dark fibers glinting faintly in the candlelight. Wren remembered the night she had tended the garden, the way the root had responded to her touch, the soft amber glow that had risen from its heart. She lifted the bundle gently, feeling its weight, and placed it on the counter, where the light fell just so, highlighting the delicate veins that ran through the herb. A soft knock echoed through the shop, and Wren turned to see Corvin standing in the doorway, his coat damp from the evening mist. He carried a wicker basket filled with fresh herbs, his hands cradling the fragrant bounty as if it were a treasure. His eyes met hers, and for a moment there was a flicker of uncertainty. Then a warm smile that softened the lines of his face. He stepped inside, the door closing with a gentle sigh, and the scent of earth and rain followed him in, mingling with the herbs already present. "Evening, Wren," he said in a voice that was low and steady, like the rustle of leaves. "I thought you might need some fresh thyme and sage for the potions you're working on." She nodded, grateful for his thoughtfulness, and together they placed the basket on the counter. The thyme's green needles brushed against the amber light, and the sage released a sweet, resinous aroma that seemed to settle into the very walls of the shop. They moved together in a quiet choreography, arranging the herbs, aligning the jars, and setting the candle to burn a little longer. Their movements were unhurried, each action a gentle ripple in the calm of the night. Corvin reached for a small brass kettle that sat near the back, its surface polished smooth by years of use. He filled it with water from the stone basin, the sound of the liquid pouring a soft, melodic trickle. Wren watched the steam rise, curling like a delicate veil, and felt a sense of peace settle over her. The kettle began to warm, and the soft hum of the fire beneath it seemed to echo the steady rhythm of the forest outside. "Your grandmother kept a special blend for the sick," Corvin said quietly, his gaze drifting to a shelf where a jar of dried elderberries rested. She believed that a touch of sweetness could coax the body back to health. Wren smiled. The Wren's smile widened as she reached for the jar, her fingertips brushing the cool glass. Inside, the elderberries glimmered like tiny rubies, their dark skins flecked with the faintest dust of dried sugar. She lifted the lid, and a sweet, earthy perfume rose, wrapping the room in a quiet comfort that seemed to hum in time with the fire's soft crackle. "I think I'll use a pinch of these for the little boy with the fever," she whispered, more to the herbs than to Corvin, as though the plants could hear her intentions and respond in kind. Corvin's eyes softened. "Hazel always knew when a child needed a gentle hand," he said, his voice low, the words falling like leaves onto a still pond. He placed a wooden spoon beside the kettle, its surface worn smooth by countless stirrings. Together they measured a handful of dried thyme, letting the fragrant green spill into the amber light, then added a sprig of fresh sage, its silvery leaves trembling in the air as if shyly greeting the night. The kettle began to sigh, the water turning a pale gold as the herbs released their quiet magic. Wren lifted the spoon, stirring slowly, each turn a deliberate circle that seemed to echo the slow rotation of the moon overhead. The steam curled higher, forming wisps that floated like ghostly ribbons, and in that gentle motion she felt a thread of connection to the generations before her, threads of love, of loss, of quiet perseverance woven through the very walls of the bitter root shop. A soft rustle announced Pepper's arrival. The cat, sleek and silver-grey, slipped through the doorway with the grace of a shadow, his amber eyes flickering in the candlelight. He padded to the counter, his tail swaying like a metronome, and brushed his cheek against the jar of elderberries, as if seeking approval. Wren laughed softly, the sound a warm ripple in the quiet. "You seem to approve, dear Pepper," she murmured, reaching out a hand. The cat paused, his whiskers trembling, then allowed a tentative rub against her palm, the first sign of trust since her arrival. Corvin watched the exchange, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "She's a hard creature to win over," he said, his tone gentle. "But you're doing well, Wren." He turned his attention back to the kettle, the fire's glow reflecting in his thoughtful gaze. There's a small garden behind the apothecary that's been struggling. The soil turned sour after the last storm. Hazel kept a special mixture for that, something she never wrote down fully. I think it's time we try to remember. Wren nodded, her mind already traveling to the garden's overgrown rows of rosemary, lavender, and the stubborn thistles that had claimed the space. She poured a portion of the simmering brew into a small crystal vial, the liquid catching the light and turning a soft amber. "Let's take this to the garden," she suggested, cradling the vial as though it were a newborn hope. They stepped out into the night, the village of Thistledown hushed under a quilt of stars. The cobblestones glistened with a faint sheen of dew, each step echoing softly in the cool air. The herbalist's shop sat a short distance away, its wooden sign swinging gently in the breeze. The letters Corvin's Apothecary, etched in weathered paint. Beyond it, a narrow lane led to a low stone wall that marked the boundary of the shared garden. The garden lay in a quiet slump, its once neat beds now tangled with wild vines. Moonlight filtered through the canopy of ancient oaks, casting silver patterns on the soil. Wren knelt beside a wilted rosemary plant, its leaves drooping like tired fingers. She uncorked the vial and let a few drops fall onto the roots, the amber liquid seeping into the earth with a soft hiss. The garden seemed to inhale, the air growing sweeter, the night sounds softening to a hushed lullaby. As the potion settled, a faint rustle came from the far corner where a row of lavender stood, their purple heads trembling as if waking from a long sleep. Pepper, ever curious, slipped from Wren's side and padded toward the lavender, his tail flicking with a rhythm that matched the night's heartbeat. He nudged a small stone, and a gentle wind stirred, carrying the scent of the herbs through the garden and out into the village, a whisper of promise on the breeze. In the distance, the faint glow of Mabel's inn flickered, its windows casting amber rectangles onto the thatched roofs. The innkeeper's voice, low and melodic, drifted on the air as she sang a soft lullaby to a child asleep in the hearth. The song rose and fell like the tide, a soothing cadence that seemed to bind the village together in a shared breath. Wren felt the weight of the old stories, the lingering grief, and the quiet hope that threaded through each note. Returning to the shop, Wren found Corvin already arranging fresh herbs on the counter, his hands moving with a practiced ease. He placed a bundle of lavender beside the kettle, the scent mingling with the thyme and sage, creating a tapestry of fragrance that wrapped the room like a warm blanket. "The garden responded," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "and the village feels it too. There's a subtle shift, like the first light after a long night." Wren smiled, feeling the soft glow of the candle reflected in her eyes. She reached for a small notebook that lay open on the ledger, its pages filled with Hazel's delicate script. A fresh entry awaited her, blank and inviting. She lifted her pen, the ink gliding smoothly across the paper, and began to write. Today the garden breathed anew, and with it, perhaps the hearts of Thistledown. The words settled onto the page, each line a gentle promise that the bitter root would soon bloom again. Outside, the forest whispered, the leaves rustling in a rhythm that matched the pulse of the shop. Inside, the fire crackled softly, its glow painting the walls with amber shadows that danced in quiet harmony. The night deepened, wrapping the village in a velvety stillness, and Wren felt the gentle pull of sleep tugging at the edges of her thoughts. Yet she stayed, savoring the moment. The fire settled into a low, steady sigh, each ember a tiny heartbeat that seemed to echo the rhythm of the forest beyond the shop's cracked windows. Wren watched the flames dance, their orange tongues licking the darkness, and felt a softness spreading through her shoulders, as if the weight of the day were being drawn out, one gentle breath at a time. The candle on the windowsill flickered in tandem, its light spilling onto the wooden floorboards, tracing delicate patterns that reminded her of the vines that curled around the old stone well in the village square. She inhaled the mingled aromas, smoke, herbs, and the faint sweetness of the honey jars that lined the shelf, allowing each scent to settle in her lungs like a quiet promise. A soft rustle came from the back of the shop, where Pepper the cat lay curled in a sun-warmed corner. His eyes, half closed, flickered open for a moment, catching the amber glow before sliding back into a contented stare. He stretched his lithe body, his paws kneading the worn rug as though coaxing the very wood to remember the warmth of Hazel's hands. Wren reached out, her fingers brushing the cat's silky fur, and felt a subtle vibration travel up her arm, a reminder that the shop itself was alive, holding memories like a tapestry of whispered threads. Pepper's tail thumped lightly against the counter, a quiet metronome that marked the passing of time in a place where minutes often lingered like dew on a leaf. Beyond the door, the night deepened, and a gentle rain began to tap against the panes, each droplet a soft percussion that blended with the crackle of the fire. The sound was soothing, a lullaby for the world outside, coaxing the trees to sway in a slow, measured sway. Wren's gaze drifted to the window, where the forest was a dark silhouette, its branches reaching outward like patient fingers. In the distance, the village lights glimmered faintly, their amber glow mirrored in the puddles that gathered at the cobblestones. The rain seemed to wash away the lingering doubts that had clung to her thoughts, replacing them with a calm certainty that the night held space for healing. A gentle knock sounded at the back door, light enough that it barely disturbed the quiet. Wren turned, and there, standing in the doorway, was Mabel, her coat damp from the rain, a small bundle of wildflowers cradled in her arms. Her eyes, usually bright with the sparkle of gossip, were softened, reflecting the steady glow of the shop's interior. "I thought you might need a little more light," she said, her voice low, as if sharing a secret with the walls themselves. She placed the flowers on the counter, a modest arrangement of thistledown blossoms, rosemary sprigs, and a single violet that seemed to pulse with its own quiet hue. The scent of the fresh herbs rose, intertwining with the lingering perfume of the fire, and the shop seemed to breathe a little deeper. Mabel lingered, her gaze wandering over the shelves, where jars of dried petals and tinctures stood like quiet sentinels. "Your grandmother had a way of knowing just what the village needed," she murmured, her tone reverent, yet tinged with a hint of melancholy. She could feel the heartbeat of Thistledown, even when the world was noisy. She reached out, fingers brushing the rim of a jar of lavender oil, and for a brief instant, a shimmer of golden light flickered across the surface, as if Hazel's memory brushed the present. "I've kept a small notebook," Mabel added, pulling a weathered leather-bound book from beneath her coat. Hazel wrote in it when she felt the village was troubled. "Perhaps there's something here that can help you." Wren accepted the notebook with a grateful smile, her fingertips lingering on the cracked leather. The pages inside were filled with delicate, looping script, hazelnut brown ink that seemed to pulse faintly under the candlelight. Each entry was a small observation: the time the river rose higher than usual, the night the owls sang louder than the wind, the moment a particular herb sprouted despite the chill. There were also sketches of roots tangled together, annotated with notes about how certain combinations could soothe a fevered heart or ease a restless mind. As she turned the pages, a quiet understanding settled over her. The shop's true power lay not only in the potions it could brew, but in the attentive listening that had guided Hazel's hands for decades. Outside, the rain softened to a mist, and the forest seemed to lean in, as if eager to hear the whispered stories being exchanged within the shop's walls. Corvin stepped forward from the back, his eyes reflecting the fire's glow, and placed a hand lightly on Wren's shoulder. "The garden is thriving," he said, his voice steady, "and the villagers are beginning to feel the change. It's as if the bitter root is finally remembering its purpose." He glanced at the notebook in Wren's hands, then at the bundle of flowers on the counter. "Sometimes the smallest acts, an extra sprig of rosemary, a shared story, are the ones that mend the deepest wounds." Wren felt the words settle like warm honey on her tongue, each syllable a gentle affirmation. She looked around the shop, at the shelves that had once seemed heavy with the weight of past grievances, now bathed in a soft amber light that made every surface glow with quiet possibility. The fire crackled a little brighter, casting shadows that swayed like leaves in a gentle breeze. The rain's lullaby continued, a steady rhythm that coaxed thoughts to slow, to settle, to rest. She placed the notebook back on the counter, her hand lingering over the fresh entries she had begun earlier, feeling the ink dry under the candle's glow. In that moment, the world outside seemed to pause, the forest holding its breath, the village lights blinking softly like distant fireflies. The shop, the garden, the rain, and the gentle purr of Pepper all blended into a single, harmonious hum, a lullaby for the heart, a promise that the night would carry her gently toward sleep. The candle flame flickered once more, then steadied, its light a quiet beacon in the dark, inviting the thoughts of the day to dissolve into the soothing darkness that awaited beyond the wooden door. The bitter root shop. The rain whispered against the window panes, a soft patter that blended with the gentle crackle of the fire. Each drop a tiny kiss upon the world outside. Wren sat at the wooden counter, the candle's amber glow wrapping her thoughts in a warm, soothing veil. Her hand rested lightly on the smooth surface of the notebook, the ink still glistening faintly, as if it held a tiny sunrise within each letter. She breathed in the scent of damp pine and old herbs, a scent that seemed to settle into the very fibers of the shop, soothing the corners of her mind that still trembled with the day's worries. She glanced over the doorway where Pepper, the soot-grey cat with eyes like amber coins, had curled into a perfect circle, his tail wrapped around his body. The cat's soft purr resonated like a low, steady drum, matching the rhythm of the rain. Wren reached out a hand, fingers brushing the cat's fur, feeling the subtle rise and fall of his breathing. The simple contact was a quiet affirmation, a reminder that even in a place once shadowed by old grievances, gentle moments could bloom like spring buds. Outside, the forest beyond Thistledown seemed to hold its breath, the trees swaying ever so slightly as the wind whispered through their leaves. The village lights flickered like distant fireflies, each one a tiny beacon of calm in the night. Wren's thoughts drifted, as if carried on a slow, silvery stream, moving toward the edges of memory and imagination. She imagined the roots of the ancient oaks, deep and steady, reaching down into the earth, drawing nourishment from the dark soil. She felt the pull of those roots, gentle and unhurried, drawing her own heart toward a calm she had not known she possessed. The world seemed to expand, each breath a tide that rose and fell in perfect harmony, each exhale a soft sigh that released the day's lingering tension. A soft knock at the door announced a presence. Wren turned, her eyes meeting the familiar silhouette of Corvin, the village herbalist, his coat damp from the rain, his shoulders relaxed, yet carrying the weight of many seasons. He stepped inside, shaking off droplets that fell like tiny crystal beads onto the wooden floor. "Good evening, Wren," he said, his voice low and comforting, like the rustle of leaves. "I thought you might appreciate some fresh thyme. The rain has made the garden a little thirsty." He placed a small bundle of fragrant herbs on the counter, the scent of thyme mingling with the lingering aroma of candle wax and rain-kissed pine. Wren smiled, a soft curve that reached her eyes. "Thank you, Corvin. It's exactly what the shop needed." Corvin's gaze lingered on the notebook, then drifted to the candle flame. "You've done well tonight." The bitter root shop. The candle flame danced softly, its light a warm whisper against the shadows that lingered in the corners of the shop. Wren felt the gentle pull of the flame, a steady rhythm that matched the quiet beating of her own heart. She reached for the notebook, the pages worn thin by years of careful ink, and let her fingertips brush the familiar curve of Hazel's handwriting. The letters seemed to breathe, each stroke a small exhale, a reminder that the past was not a weight, but a soft blanket draped over the present. Your grandmother kept many secrets in these pages. Cornan's voice floated, low and steady, as if the walls themselves were listening. But she also left room for new stories to grow. Wren smiled, the smile a slow bloom, and turned the page. The ink spoke of moonlit harvests, of herbs gathered at dawn, of recipes that sang with the wind. She traced a line that described a simple tea to calm restless children, a brew that smelled of lavender and honey, a potion that could coax sleep from even the most wandering mind. She inhaled the scent of the old paper, the faint perfume of dried rosemary that lingered from the previous day's concoctions. She felt the shop breathe with her, the wooden beams humming a low, ancient lullaby, the floorboards sighing beneath her feet as if they too were settling into a gentle rest. A soft rustle came from the doorway. Pepper, the silver-grey cat with eyes like amber lanterns, slipped inside, his tail a quiet metronome. He paused, eyes fixed on the bundle of time, then glanced at Wren, his gaze softening. The cat's presence was a quiet affirmation, a reminder that trust was built one gentle moment at a time. "Good night, Pepper," Wren whispered, her voice a feather falling onto a still pond. The cat brushed against her leg, a subtle purr resonating through the shop, a low vibration that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the forest beyond the windows. Outside, rain whispered against the thatched roof, each droplet a tiny note in the symphony of the night. The world beyond the shop was a tapestry of muted greens and silver, the forest trees standing like patient sentinels, their leaves rustling softly, as if sharing stories only the wind could hear. Corvin moved to the shelf, his fingers brushing the jars of dried herbs, each one a memory sealed in glass. He selected a small vial of crushed moonflower petals, their silver hue catching the candlelight. "These," he said, "were Hazel's favorite for dreaming." She believed that a single petal could guide a wandering mind back to its own quiet place. Wren took the vial, feeling the cool glass against her palm. She imagined the moonflower opening under a night sky, its petals unfurling like a promise, each layer a step toward calm. She placed the vial beside the notebook, a quiet offering to the night. The shop's old wooden door creaked gently as a wind gust slipped through, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant sea salt. It was a reminder that Thistledown rested at the edge of both forest and water, a place where the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next gentle tide. Wren turned back to the notebook, her eyes lingering on a line that described a small kindness. "When a neighbor's child cannot sleep, a cup of warm milk infused with a whisper of lavender and a pinch of honey will carry them to the realm of dreams." She smiled, feeling the words settle like soft moss upon her thoughts. She imagined the child's small hands curled around a warm mug, the steam rising like tiny clouds that whispered promises of rest. She felt the gentle rise and fall of the child's breath as sleep wrapped its silken arms around them, a lullaby without words, only the quiet hum of love and care. A distant chime of a church bell rang, slow and resonant, its tone traveling through the village streets, through the rain-slick cobblestones, into the heart of the shop. The sound seemed to mark the passing of time, each toll a reminder that night was deepening, that the world was winding down, that peace was arriving on quiet feet. Corvin placed a small wooden spoon beside the time bundle, the spoon polished smooth by years of stirring. "When you brew, remember to stir clockwise as the sun rises, and then counterclockwise as the moon wanes," he murmured. "The motion carries intention, and intention carries the potion's heart." Wren nodded, the motion of her own breathing aligning with his words. She lifted the thyme, inhaling its fresh, earthy scent. The bitter root shop wren inhaled the thyme, its fresh, earthy scent filling her lungs like a quiet forest after rain. The aroma seemed to settle on the wooden shelves, mingling with the faint perfume of dried lavender and the faint, comforting musk of old paper. She felt the breath of the shop itself, a gentle rhythm that matched the slow thrum of her own heart. The candle on the counter flickered softly, its light dancing across the glass jars, casting warm halos that swam like tiny lanterns in a sea of shadows. She set the time down, the tiny leaves glistening with a thin coat of dew that seemed to have been left there by the memory of a morning mist. The shop was quiet now, the only sounds the soft crackle of the flame and the distant echo of the church bell, each toll a slow, measured pulse that seemed to mark the passage of time in the village. The world outside was wrapped in a gentle rain, each drop a tiny percussion against the cobblestones, a lullaby for the stones and the roofs alike. Corvin watched her for a moment, his eyes reflecting the candlelight. He reached for a small brass kettle, its surface worn smooth by years of use. "The time will help steady the mind," he said quietly, his voice a low hum that blended with the rain. "When the mind is steady, the heart finds its own rhythm, and the potion finds its purpose." Wren nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle like a soft blanket over her shoulders. She poured a handful of thyme into a crystal bowl, the green leaves spilling like tiny forest ferns onto the cool surface. The bowl seemed to hum faintly, as if the herbs themselves were remembering a song long forgotten. She lifted the bowl to her nose, inhaling the scent once more, letting it weave through the corridors of her thoughts. The cat, Pepper, stretched lazily across the windowsill, his amber eyes half closed, tail flicking lazily as if in time with the rain. He glanced at Wren, then at the time, and finally settled his gaze on the candle flame. For a moment, the shop felt like a living thing, breathing in unison with the villagers' quiet lives beyond its doors. Wren reached for a small vial of honey, its golden liquid catching the light and shimmering like a tiny sunrise. She added a drop, then another, watching the honey swirl into the thyme, turning the green into a soft, amber-tinted blend. The scent changed, deepening, taking on a sweet undertone that reminded her of summer afternoons spent in the meadow behind her childhood home, when the world seemed to stretch forever and the sky was a limitless blue. Corvin placed a wooden spoon into the bowl, the spoon's smooth surface warm from his hands. "Stir gently," he whispered, "as if you are coaxing a secret from the wind." He moved the spoon in a slow, deliberate circle, first clockwise, then counterclockwise, his motions mirroring the sunrise and the moonrise he had spoken of earlier. The thyme swirled, releasing a faint steam that the steam rose in thin ribbons, curling around the wooden beams like shy wisps of memory. Corvin's eyes softened as he watched the thyme dance, the amber hue spreading like sunrise across the surface. He let his hand linger on the spoon, feeling the gentle resistance of the liquid, as if the potion itself were breathing in rhythm with the quiet rain that tapped against the shop's small leaded windows. "Patience," he murmured, his voice a low hum that seemed to settle into the stone floor. "A potion is more than ingredients. It is a conversation between the maker and the earth." He glanced at Wren, seeing the concentration that painted her cheeks with a faint rose, the way her brow furrowed not from doubt, but from the careful attention she gave each motion. The candle flame flickered, casting a warm glow that painted the shelves with soft amber shadows, and the scent of thyme, honey, and rain filled the room, wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Wren lifted the spoon, feeling the weight of the liquid as it swirled around her wrist. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, letting the scent settle deep within her, recalling the meadow of her childhood, the laughter of distant children, the hum of bees over wildflowers. In that moment, the past and present seemed to blend, the old shop's stories whispering through the steam, urging her forward. She lowered the spoon back into the bowl, allowing the honey-infused thyme to settle. The liquid now held a faint golden sheen, the color of late afternoon light filtering through the forest canopy. A soft sigh escaped her lips, a breath of relief and anticipation. The potion was not yet complete. There was still a final ingredient, one that had been spoken of in the old ledger, a single leaf of bitter root that had once given the shop its name. Corvin reached for a small wooden box tucked beneath the counter, its surface worn smooth by years of careful handling. He lifted the lid, revealing a single dark leaf, its veins like delicate rivers etched into the surface. The leaf seemed to pulse faintly, as if it remembered the countless times it had been called upon to heal, to soothe, to mend. "Here," he said, handing the leaf to Wren. "The bitter root knows both sorrow and hope. It balances the sweetness of the honey with its own quiet strength." He watched her fingers as they traced the leaf's edge, feeling the subtle texture, the weight of its history. Wren placed the leaf into the bowl, and a gentle hiss rose from the mixture, the steam swirling faster, as if the potion recognized the union of flavors. The scent shifted once more, acquiring a deeper, earthier tone, a hint of pine and damp soil, a reminder of the forest that cradled Thistledown. The rain outside seemed to fall a little softer, each droplet a soft percussion against the roof, a lullaby for the shop's heart. She lifted the bowl to her nose again, inhaling the full tapestry of aromas. The bitter root's edge was present, but it was softened by the honey and thyme, creating a balance that felt both grounding and uplifting. She could feel the potion's intention forming, a gentle promise to ease the weariness that had settled over the village like a thin mist. Corvin smiled, a faint crease appearing at the corners of his eyes. "You have listened well," he said. "The shop has always spoken to those who are willing to hear. Hazel taught us that the greatest magic is the quiet understanding of what the world needs, not what we think it needs." Wren nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle into her chest like a warm stone. She turned to the shelves, where jars of dried herbs glimmered in the candlelight, each one a story, each one a reminder of the generations that had tended this place. She could see, in the faint glow, the outline of a small, hand-drawn map that Hazel had once kept, marking the places where the forest's gifts were gathered, the hidden springs, the moss-covered stones that held secret waters. She traced the map with her fingertip, feeling a connection to the woman she had never met, to the stories that had been whispered in the village long before she arrived. The map led her eyes to a tiny drawing of a moon nestled among the roots of an ancient oak. The moon was shaded with a soft silver, its light spilling over a small pond that reflected the night sky. Beneath it, a single word was written in Hazel's neat script. "Remember, remember," Wren whispered, the word hanging in the air, a promise and a reminder. She felt the rhythm of the shop align with her own heartbeat, a slow, steady pulse that echoed the rain's gentle rhythm. The potion, now a shimmering amber liquid, rested calm in the bowl, waiting for the final touch. Corvin reached for a small crystal vial, its glass clear and cool. He poured the potion carefully, the amber liquid catching the candlelight and turning it into a soft glow that seemed to pulse with life. He handed the vial to Wren, his hand lingering for a moment, the contact warm and reassuring. "Take this to the village," he said softly. "It is ready to be shared, to carry the kindness you have already begun to sow." He looked toward the door, where the rain had begun to ease, the droplets forming small rivulets that traced gentle paths down the glass. Wren lifted the vial, feeling its weight, feeling the quiet power it contained. She slipped it into the pocket of her apron, the cool glass against the fabric, a reminder of the delicate balance she had created. She turned toward the back door, where a narrow hallway led to the street outside, the cobblestones wet with rain, reflecting the dim glow of lanterns that hung from wrought iron posts. She paused for a moment, listening to the distant murmur of the village, the soft chatter of a few late-night walkers, the occasional bark of a dog, the faint creak of wooden shutters as they settled. The air outside carried the scent of pine and sea, a mingling that reminded her of the forest. She stepped onto the slick cobblestones, the lantern light catching on the rain-kissed stones and casting amber pools that seemed to ripple with each soft footfall. The village of Thistledown lay quiet, its shutters half closed, the faint hum of hearths and distant laughter drifting through the narrow lanes like a lullaby. Wren inhaled the cool, pine-laden air, feeling the sea's distant sigh mingle with the scent of damp earth. The gentle rhythm of the rain had settled into a steady murmur, a comforting backdrop to the thoughts that fluttered in her mind. The first house she passed was the little stone cottage where Mabel kept the inn. Its thatched roof sagged just enough to give it character, and a thin wisp of steam curled from the chimney, promising warmth within. Wren paused at the door, the brass knob cool beneath her fingertips. She raised the vial, the amber glow catching the light, and knocked lightly. Mabel opened the door with a surprised smile that quickly softened into a knowing look. "Wren, dear, what brings you out in this rain?" she asked, pulling the door wider to invite her in. "Just a small gift," Wren whispered, holding out the crystal vial. "A potion for the village. It's meant to help the gardens and the livestock, the way you asked." Mabel's eyes widened, the corners of her mouth turning up in a gentle grin. She took the vial with reverent fingers, cradling it as if it were a fragile bird. "You've done something wonderful," she said, her voice low, as though sharing a secret with the walls. "Come in, dry your feet, and we'll talk over tea." Inside, the inn glowed with a warm amber light. A fire crackled in the hearth, sending soft shadows that danced across the wooden beams. The scent of fresh bread and herb-infused broth filled the room, wrapping around Wren like a comforting blanket. Mabel poured tea into 2 chipped cups, the steam rising in lazy curls. "Do you remember the story of the blight?" Mabel asked, her voice gentle, her eyes distant as if recalling a memory far beyond the present moment. Wren nodded, feeling the weight of the past settle between them. Hazel tried to stop it. The villagers blamed her, and the memory has lingered like a shadow. Mabel sighed, stirring her tea slowly. "Your grandmother was brave, Wren. She loved this place. She tried to protect us, even when the herbs turned against us. The truth has been buried under fear for too long. Your kindness now is a light that can guide us back to what she truly was." Wren sipped the tea, feeling its warmth spread through her chest. The bitter notes of the herbs blended with the sweet honey, a balance that mirrored the potion she now carried. "I think the village is ready to listen," she said, her voice soft but steady. Mabel placed her hand over Wren's, the touch warm and reassuring. "Then let us share this gift. I'll gather the townsfolk at the square tomorrow at dawn. We'll offer the potion to the fields and the animals, and perhaps the old wounds will begin to heal." Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, each drop a tiny kiss on the stone streets. Wren felt a quiet resolve settle within her. She thanked Mabel, slipping the vial back into her apron, and stepped back into the night, the lanterns guiding her path like quiet stars. The next morning, the first pale light of dawn brushed the horizon, turning the sky a soft rose. The village square, usually quiet, was already stirring with the low murmur of villagers gathering, their breath forming fleeting clouds in the cool air. Wren arrived with the crystal vial nestled against her heart, the amber glow now faint but steady, as if it carried the promise of a new day. Corvin stood at the edge of the square, his hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning the crowd. When he saw Wren, his expression softened, and he stepped forward, his voice low but clear. "The village will welcome this," he said, nodding toward the vial. "Your grandmother's spirit lives in these walls, and now in you." Wren smiled, feeling the weight of his words settle like a feather. She raised the vial, the amber light catching the early sun, and poured a small amount onto a shallow stone basin placed at the center of the square. The liquid spread, forming a thin, shimmering film that caught the light and seemed to pulse with a gentle heartbeat. A hush fell over the gathering. Children, their eyes wide with curiosity, peered over the shoulders of their parents. An elderly farmer, his hands rough from years of toil, stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the glowing liquid. He knelt, dipping his cupped hands into the basin, and lifted the amber essence to his lips. The moment it touched his tongue, his shoulders relaxed, a faint smile blooming across his weathered face. Whispers rose like a soft wind through the square. "It smells of pine," a young mother said, holding her infant close. "And of sea." The child gurgled, his eyes brightening as the scent seemed to wrap around him like a lullaby. Wren watched as the potion's gentle magic seeped into the air, a subtle fragrance that seemed to coax the very soil beneath the square to breathe. The villagers began to move, each taking a small sip, each feeling a quiet warmth spread through them, easing the aches of sleepless nights and lingering worries. The garden fences that lined the square, long neglected, seemed to straighten themselves, the vines retreating as if acknowledging a new caretaker. Mabel approached, her cheeks flushed with gratitude. "You have given us more than a potion, Wren," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have given us hope, and a reminder that kindness can bloom even after the darkest storms." Corvin placed a hand on Wren's shoulder, his eyes reflecting the amber glow that still lingered in the basin. "Your grandmother would be proud," he murmured, "and so am I." The day unfolded slowly, the sun climbing higher, casting golden shafts through the leaves of the surrounding forest. The day unfolded slowly, the sun climbing higher, casting golden shafts through the leaves of the surrounding forest. The light filtered through the canopy in gentle ribbons, painting the stone pathways with soft amber, and turning the mist that lingered near the river into a veil of silver. Wren felt the warmth settle on her shoulders like a familiar blanket, each breath drawing in the scent of pine and sea salt, each exhale releasing a quiet gratitude that settled deep in her chest. She moved through the square with a deliberate pace, her steps measured and calm. The market stalls that had stood empty for weeks now began to stir, their owners arranging fresh herbs, loaves of bread, and jars of honey with a tenderness that mirrored the care she had poured into the potion. A gentle hum rose from the villagers as they went about their tasks, a low, soothing murmur that seemed to echo the rhythm of the tide. Children laughed softly, their voices like distant bells, and the sound settled over the square, wrapping the world in a comforting hush. Wren paused beside the old well, its stone walls covered in moss and tiny wildflowers that had pushed their way through the cracks. She cupped her hands and drew water, feeling the cool liquid flow through her fingers, clear and bright. As she lifted the water to her lips, a faint shimmer caught the light, and for a moment she imagined the memory of her grandmother's gentle smile reflected in the ripples. The taste was pure, a reminder of mornings by the hearth, of stories whispered over steaming tea. She set the cup down and turned to the shop, feeling a quiet invitation to step inside and tend to the lingering tasks. Inside the bitter root shop, the air was still, scented with dried lavender, rosemary, and the faint trace of the amber potion that still lingered in the corners. Shelves lined with glass jars held dried petals, powdered roots, and tiny vials that caught the light and glowed softly. Pepper, the cat, stretched lazily on the windowsill, his amber eyes half closed, his tail flicking in a slow, contented rhythm. He rose and padded over to Wren, brushing his cheek against her hand, a subtle acknowledgement that the space was beginning to feel like home. Wren knelt beside the wooden counter and opened a notebook that had been left by Hazel. The pages were filled with careful script, notes about herbs, measurements, and margins filled with tiny sketches of leaves and roots. One entry caught her eye, a description of a night when a sudden chill had swept through Thistledown, when the crops had wilted and the villagers had gathered in the square, seeking comfort. Hazel had written about a potion she had brewed in secret, a mixture of bitter root, moonlit dew, and a single drop of honey, meant to coax the earth back to life. The words were soft, the ink slightly smudged, as if written with a trembling hand that still held hope. She traced the lines with her fingertip, feeling the connection across the years, feeling the weight of love and responsibility settle gently upon her. The notebook seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, a reminder that the shop was more than wood and glass. It was a vessel of memory, of care, of the quiet magic that bound the village together. With each breath, Wren felt the rhythm of the forest seep into her, the slow, steady beat of leaves rustling in the wind, the distant call of a gull over the sea, the subtle sigh of the earth as it settled into the day. Outside, the garden behind the shop began to show signs of renewal. The once drooping rosemary sprigs lifted their heads, their fragrant needles catching the sunlight. Small green shoots pushed through the soil, tentative but determined, reaching toward the sky. A robin perched on the fence, its chest puffed out as it sang a simple, melodic tune that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the village. Wren knelt down, her fingers brushing the soil, feeling the coolness beneath her nails, feeling the life that pulsed through the earth. She whispered a quiet thanks, her voice barely above the rustle of leaves, and the garden seemed to respond with a gentle sway, as if nodding in agreement. Corvin arrived later, his boots leaving faint prints on the path as he approached. He carried a basket of fresh herbs, his eyes softening as he looked at the thriving garden and the open door of the shop. He set the basket down and offered a smile that reached his eyes, a smile that spoke of shared history and new beginnings. "I thought you might need more time," he said gently, his voice low and steady, and perhaps a little sage for the evenings. Wren accepted the herbs, her fingers brushing his, a fleeting contact that sent a warm ripple through her. "Thank you, Corvin," she replied, her tone warm and calm. "Your help means more than words can say." He lingered for a moment, his gaze drifting to the window where Pepper lay curled in a sunbeam. "The cat seems to have taken a liking to you," he remarked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Wren smiled, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. "I think he's finally feeling at home," she said, watching Pepper stretch and settle back into his spot, his purr a low, soothing vibration that filled the room. The afternoon slipped by in a gentle cascade of moments. Villagers drifted in and out of the shop, some seeking advice on simple ailments, others just stopping to share a story or a quiet word. Mabel returned with a basket of fresh berries, her cheeks still flushed from the earlier gratitude, and placed them on the counter with a soft clink. "These are from my garden," she said, her voice low. "I thought you might like them." Wren accepted the berries, feeling the cool skin of each fruit in her palm. The tiny droplets of the berries felt cool and smooth in her palm, each one a tiny globe of midnight hue that seemed to hold the night itself. As she turned them over, a faint scent rose, sweet and earthy, like the breath of the forest after a gentle rain. She placed the basket on the wooden shelf beside the ledger, the wood warm from the afternoon sun that filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns on the floor. Mabel lingered, her eyes softening as she watched the quiet rhythm of the shop. "You know," she began, voice low as a whispered wind, "Hazel used to keep a bowl of these berries on the counter, just for the sake of having something sweet to reach for when the day grew long." She smiled, a smile that held both memory and a hint of something else, something unspoken that lingered like a feather on the air. Wren listened, feeling the weight of those words settle gently around her heart. She imagined her grandmother, hands steady and sure, moving among the jars and bottles, the soft clink of glass like a lullaby. The thought was a warm thread, weaving through the present, connecting past and now in a gentle tapestry. The bell above the door chimed softly, announcing the arrival of another visitor. A young mother entered, cradling a swaddled infant whose soft whimpers rose and fell like the tide. She approached the counter with tentative steps, eyes searching for something she could not name. "Good afternoon," the mother said, her voice trembling just enough to be heard over the quiet hum of the shop. "My baby has been restless. He won't settle, no matter what I try." Wren inclined her head, her gaze softening as she looked at the child. "May I?" she asked, her tone gentle, inviting. She reached for a small amber vial from the shelf, its contents shimmering like sunrise caught in glass. "This is a calming tincture, brewed from lavender and chamomile, with a touch of honey. It's a simple thing, but it has helped many little ones find peace." The mother nodded, relief flickering across her face like a candle catching a breeze. She took the vial, her fingers brushing Wren's, a brief exchange of warmth that seemed to echo the earlier contact with Corvin's herbs. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely above a sigh. Wren smiled, her own breath slowing to match the rhythm of the shop. "May your little one rest easy," she said, watching as the mother turned toward the door, the infant's cries softening as she walked away. The shop settled back into its quiet cadence. Pepper, the cat, stretched languidly on the windowsill, his fur catching the light in a soft amber glow. He blinked slowly, eyes half closed, as if to say that everything was as it should be. The air seemed to hold a gentle hum, a low, comforting vibration that wrapped around the walls, the shelves, the people within. A few moments later, Corvin entered again, his coat damp from the recent rain that had fallen over the village. He shook off droplets, the water scattering like tiny pearls onto the floorboards. He carried a bundle of fresh rosemary and a handful of wild thyme, the scent of pine and sea mingling with the earthy aroma of the shop. "I thought I'd bring you a little extra," he said, setting the herbs on the counter with a soft thud. "The rain has washed the streets clean and the herbs are fresh now. Perhaps they'll be useful for the next brew." Wren looked at the herbs, her fingers tracing the delicate leaves, feeling the subtle vibrations of life within them. "Thank you, Corvin," she replied, her voice a whisper of gratitude. "Your kindness is a steady tide." He nodded, his eyes meeting hers for a moment longer than usual, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Then he turned, heading toward the back of his own shop, where pots of simmering broth released fragrant clouds that curled like gentle spirals in the air. The afternoon slipped further into evening, and the light outside grew softer, the sun dipping low behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of lavender and rose. The shop's windows glowed warmly, casting a golden halo into the street. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves outside, bringing with it the faint scent of sea salt and pine needles. Mabel returned once more, this time with a small wooden box. She placed it on the counter with a careful hand, the wood smooth and worn, its corners softened by years of use. "I found this in the attic," she said, her voice low, "among Hazel's things. I thought you might want it." Wren lifted the lid, revealing a collection of tiny glass vials, each filled with a different colored liquid that caught the light and turned it into a soft, dancing glow. There were vials of amber, of deep violet, of pale green, each labeled in Hazel's neat, looping script. "These are her old experiments," Mabel continued, her eyes flickering with a mixture of reverence and curiosity. "She kept them here, in case anyone ever needed them. I never understood why she kept them, but perhaps now you will." Wren ran a fingertip over the glass, feeling the smooth coolness of each vial. She could almost hear the faint echo of her grandmother's breath, the quiet rhythm of her hands moving over the same shelves, the soft clink of glass, the whisper of herbs being measured. A sense of belonging settled in her chest, warm and steady, like a hearth fire that had been waiting for someone to tend it. "Thank you, Mabel," she said, her voice a soft caress. "These will be very helpful." Mabel's cheeks flushed a little, a smile curling at the edges of her mouth. "I think Hazel would be pleased to see her shop alive again," she murmured, the words hanging in the air like a promise. The shop's door opened once more, and a gentle rustle announced the arrival of an elderly man, his steps slow and measured. He carried a small wooden crate, its surface worn smooth by countless journeys. He set it down on the counter with a soft thump, the sound resonating like a heartbeat. "I'm looking for a remedy," he said, his voice low and steady, "for the wilt in my garden. The roses have lost their color, and the vines are turning brown. I've heard you have a way with plants." Wren turned her gaze to the crate, noting the faint scent of soil and earth that clung to it. She opened it carefully, revealing a bundle of roots. She lifted the bundle of roots from the worn wood, feeling the cool, damp weight of earth-touched fibers in her palm. The roots were thick and knotted, their surfaces darkened by time. their scent a quiet whisper of forest floor after rain. Wren inhaled the aroma, letting the scent settle in the soft space of her lungs, like a gentle tide lapping at a quiet shore. She set the roots on the counter, arranging them beside the glass jars, beside the neat rows of dried lavender and rosemary that Hazel had once tended with care. The elderly man watched her with eyes that held the patience of seasons, the quiet steadiness of a tree that has weathered many winters. "These are bitter roots," he said, his voice a low hum, "the kind that hold the memory of the soil. They have been waiting for a gentle hand." Wren smiled, a smile that was small and careful, as if she were tracing the edge of a feather. "I will tend them," she replied, her tone as soft as a sigh. "I will coax them back to life, just as I hope to coax the garden back to bloom." She reached for a copper kettle that had sat idle for years, its surface dulled by dust, its handle warm from the faint glow of the lantern overhead. She filled it with water drawn from the village well, the water clear and cool, a mirror of the sky reflected in the shop's window. She set the kettle on the stove, the flame flickering like a sleepy firefly, and waited for the water to rise, patient and steady. As the water began to bubble, she added a pinch of salt, a sprinkle of crushed peppermint leaves, and the bitter roots, one by one, laying them gently into the simmering pool. The kettle sang a soft, low note, a quiet song of transformation, the roots releasing their dark hue into the water, turning it a deep, earthy amber. Wren watched the swirl, the way the colors blended, the way the steam rose in lazy curls, like a veil of mist over a quiet pond. She breathed in the scent, the mingling of earth and herb, of memory and hope, and felt a calm settle deeper in her chest, a calm that steadied her hands and softened the edges of her worries. The elderly man, whose name she learned was Alden, settled into a wooden stool by the counter, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze gentle and unhurried. He watched the steam rise, his eyes reflecting the amber glow. "My garden has been quiet for many moons," he murmured. "The roses have forgotten their blush, the vines have lost their song. I have tended them with love, but the soil has grown weary." Wren lifted the kettle, pouring the amber liquid into a small crystal vial, its surface catching the lantern light in a soft gleam. She capped it with a cork, feeling the weight of the potion in her palm, feeling the quiet promise it held. "Here," she said, placing the vial before Alden, "a remedy for wilt, a whisper of renewal. Let it soak into the earth, let it drink the roots, and may your garden find its voice again." Alden took the vial with reverent hands, his fingers brushing the glass, feeling the warmth that lingered from the kettle. He nodded, a slow, grateful movement. "Thank you, child of Hazel," he said, his voice a low rustle. "You have given me more than a potion. You have given me hope." Wren felt a small warmth blossom in her heart, a quiet glow that spread like sunrise over a quiet glade. She turned to the shop's back door, where a soft rustle announced the presence of Pepper, the cat whose amber eyes had watched her with cautious curiosity since she first entered. Pepper padded across the wooden floor, his tail swaying in a lazy rhythm, his paws silent as snow. He brushed against Wren's leg, a gentle nudge, a sign that the shop's spirit was beginning to accept her presence. The cat's fur was warm against her skin, his purr a low, steady hum that seemed to echo the rhythm of the kettle's song. Wren knelt, letting her hand rest on his back, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath his sleek coat. "You're welcome here, Pepper," she whispered, her voice a soft murmur. "We'll take care of this place together." Outside the shop, the village of Thistledown settled into the quiet of evening. The wind whispered through the trees, the leaves rustling like distant pages turning in an old book. The sea beyond the forest sighed in low, soothing breaths, its waves a lullaby that reached even the deepest corners of the town. Inside, the shop seemed to breathe with her, the shelves sighing, the jars glimmering. the air thick with the scent of herbs and possibility. A moment later, the bell above the door chimed gently, announcing another visitor. A young woman stepped in, her hair bound in a loose braid, her eyes bright with curiosity. She introduced herself as Lila, a weaver who had come to seek a calming draught for a restless child. Wren listened, her attention calm and focused, as Lila described the child's sleepless nights, the tossing and turning, the whispered cries that rose like wind through the trees. Wren guided Lila to a small wooden table near the window, where the light fell in soft, amber strips, painting the wood with a gentle glow. She reached for a jar of chamomile, its dried blossoms bright as sunrise, and a sprig of lavender, its scent a soft lullaby. She measured the herbs with careful, deliberate motions, each movement slow and measured, each pause a breath taken in harmony with the quiet of the shop. She placed the herbs into a clean kettle, added fresh water from the well, and set it upon the stove. The flame flickered, a gentle dance. The water began to bubble, rising and falling in a rhythm, as steady she watched the water rise and fall. Each tiny bubble, a soft sigh. Each ripple, a quiet heartbeat of the kettle. The steam curled upward like a gentle mist, spreading the scent of chamomile and lavender through the room, wrapping the shelves and the wooden beams in a warm, fragrant blanket. Wren's fingers moved slowly, steady as the tide, as she lifted the lid and poured the golden liquid into a simple earthen cup, the surface catching the amber light that filtered through the window. Lila took the cup with reverent hands, her eyes softening as the steam brushed her cheek. She inhaled deeply, the fragrant vapor settling in her mind like a calm tide, and whispered a quiet thank you. "My child has been restless," she said, her voice a hushed murmur, "and the night feels endless. I hope this will bring gentle dreams." Wren smiled, a small, sincere curve of her lips. "May the night be kind," she replied, her words flowing slow and steady, each syllable a soft stone placed carefully in a river. She reached for a clean rag, wiping the counter with a gentle rhythmic motion, the cloth sliding over the wood with a sound like rustling leaves. The bell above the door chimed again, a soft, distant chime that seemed to echo through the quiet of the shop. A middle-aged man entered, his shoulders hunched under the weight of a weathered coat, his eyes scanning the shelves as if searching for a forgotten memory. He introduced himself as Thomas, the keeper of the village lighthouse, and explained that his lantern had been sputtering, its flame wavering in the wind. He asked if Wren might have a tincture to steady the light, to keep it bright through the dark hours. Wren listened, her attention a calm lake, reflecting each word without ripple. She guided Thomas to a corner, where a row of glass bottles stood, each filled with a different hue of liquid, each labeled in Hazel's neat script. She selected a small vial of rosemary oil, its scent sharp yet soothing, and a pinch of dried sage, its green leaves whispering of ancient forests. With deliberate care, she measured the herbs, their weight balanced in her palm, and placed them into a small brass bowl. She added a few drops of the rosemary oil, the liquid glistening like dew on a spider's web, and then stirred gently, clockwise, the motion slow and steady, as if turning the hands of a clock that ticked only in whispers. The mixture shimmered, a soft green glow that seemed to pulse with quiet confidence. She poured the potion into a thin glass bottle, sealing it with a cork that fit snugly, the sound of the cork clicking into place like a soft heartbeat. Thomas took the bottle, his fingers brushing the cool glass, and felt a warmth spread through his chest, as if a small fire had been kindled inside. He thanked Wren with a nod that carried the weight of many nights spent watching the sea, and left the shop with a gentle smile, the bell chiming once more as the door closed behind him. The shop settled back into its own quiet rhythm. The kettle's hum faded, the steam drifted up and vanished, and the light through the window grew softer as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. Wren turned back to the counter, where a thin ledger lay open, its pages filled with Hazel's careful script. She traced the lines with her fingertip, feeling the raised ink, the way each letter seemed to hold a piece of the past. The ledger whispered of recipes, of notes about the bitter root that had once saved a Thistledown forest path. A soft breath of night settles over the world, and the sky drapes itself in a blanket of deep, quiet blue. The stars begin to whisper, one by one, their light gentle and steady, like distant lanterns guiding a calm wanderer home. You find yourself standing at the edge of a quiet forest. The path before you, a smooth ribbon of earth, worn smooth by countless gentle footsteps. The air is cool, scented with pine and earth, and each inhalation feels like a soothing sigh, each exhalation releasing the day's lingering thoughts. You step onto the path, feeling the soft moss beneath your shoes, each step a soft, muffled press, a quiet promise of safety. The trees stand tall, their branches swaying ever so slightly, rustling like a lullaby whispered through leaves. Their trunks are sturdy, their bark warm, inviting you to lean against them, to feel the slow, steady pulse of the forest's heart. The path winds gently, curving around ancient oaks and silver birches, each curve a breath, each turn a moment of stillness. Light filters through the canopy, dappling the ground with golden flecks that dance slowly, like fireflies resting in the twilight. You follow the light, letting it guide you deeper, deeper into calm. A small brook murmurs nearby, its water gliding over smooth stones, a soft, endless hum that soothes the mind. You pause at its edge, listening to the water's gentle song, feeling its cool mist kiss your cheek. The sound is rhythmic, a perfect cadence that matches the steady beat of your heart. You sit on a smooth stone, letting the brook's melody wash over you, each ripple a tender caress. The world feels vast yet intimate, as if the forest holds you in a warm, protective embrace. You breathe in the scent of fresh water and moss, and breathe out any lingering tension, letting it drift away like fallen leaves on the current. The night deepens, and a soft glow appears ahead, a lantern hung from a low branch, its light amber and steady. You rise, your steps light, your mind calm, and walk toward the glow. The lantern casts a gentle circle of warmth, inviting you to settle within its embrace. Within the circle, a modest cottage rests, its windows glowing with a soft, inviting light. Smoke curls lazily from the chimney, carrying the comforting aroma of herbs and warm tea. The door opens just enough to welcome you, and you step inside, feeling the floorboards creak softly under your feet, a sound as soothing as a whispered secret. Inside, a plush chair waits by the hearth, the fire flickering with a steady, soothing glow. You settle into the chair, feeling the cushions mold to your form, supporting you fully. The fire's crackle is a gentle rhythm, a quiet percussion that syncs with your breathing. You close your eyes, feeling the heat of the fire seep into your skin, melting away any remaining unease. A teapot whistles softly on the stove, and a fragrant steam rises, carrying notes of chamomile, lavender, and a hint of honey. You lift the cup, its warmth seeping into your palms, and sip slowly, feeling the liquid